Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. When you came through those things, what did you... I know when I was in construction, and we went through the global meltdown in the early 70s, and mainly because of the oil crisis. And between me and you were gone by then, right? Early 70s? Okay, so you won't be offended by this, but I know that the oil crisis, I've always blamed the president, Jimmy Carter, for screwing up the oil policy, but someone has made a passionate argument it was really Goldman Sachs.
All right.
But anyway, whoever was responsible, people couldn't get financing. I was in the construction business, and nobody was selling houses because they couldn't get a loan. And, so that put me out on the street. And I said, my response to that was, I'm going to change industries. I will never, I'm an idiot if I let myself go out and be in a position where somebody can do that to me again, and I don't know what I've got to do. I don't even know what that means to say that, but I'm going to figure out how I can get in a position. And for the first thing, where that won't happen to me again, where something, I go about my day controlling what I could, make myself indispensable, like you said. But, the one thing I did not have an extra 5 minutes a day for was to keep up with the worldwide oil production and, economic policy in the Middle East. And so as a result, I got screwed. And that had nothing to do with anything that I did. Everything was excellent in our end. People just could not get funding, for houses. And so I said, I'm going to get in a different industry. This roller coaster is not going to happen to me. What did you say to yourself when you went through those kinds of traumatic experiences at a pretty young age, formative time in the prime of your life? What was going off inside your head?
Look, I think it was really just taking it one day at a time. I mean, you think about a mountaineer who's climbing a mountain. They don't think about summiting when they're just climbing up first few ledges, and it sort of felt like that. It's like the marathon runner. You don't think about the finish line in your first mile, and it felt sort of like that. We were kind of going through a marathon, and it was just taking it one day at a time. Constantly. It felt like there were financial bombs going off left, right, and center, and fires popping up all over the place. And it was really just a case of just getting through it day by day. There was really no grand plan or grand vision. It was just showing up every day and doing what needed to be done.
What did you? What kind of skill set did it? Did you realize you were really good at? As you were thinking about as you're coming out the other side of this thing and thinking about other places you're going to go, what kind of skill sets had you developed that really made you unique, made you indispensable?
I mean, just resilience, grit, just being able to grit my teeth and get it done. I think was useful in that phase. But what I found really kind of made me look successful was I had an eye for talent, and I think I just had a knack, just a natural knack for getting the best out of people.
And what about grit? Where did the grit come from?
I mean, it's probably due to my martial arts training, I would think. Martial arts have been a part of my life for most of my life, and that teaches you a certain degree of persistence. Again, martial arts, there's always someone better than you. There's always someone bigger and stronger and tougher, and that I think does help to build resilience and grit and persistence.
Well, you also you come across as someone that is not, that is very hard, very grounded, let's say, and you would be very hard to get unbalanced in the ring. It would seem like that,
Yeah.
and it would seem like in a business situation, crisis comes in, warheads come through the window and blow up, that you're not the kind of person that is likely to panic and lose control. And that is something you're conscious of?
It's something you're conscious of initially. Mike Tyson's got that famous quote: "Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face." And when you've done a bit of sparring, and I did a little bit of amateur boxing as well, you just realize the truth of that statement. But kind of the more it happens to you, the more you get used to responding rather than reacting. And yeah, I think it's something that can be trained. It's something that is very conscious initially, but the more you do it through repetition, it becomes somewhat more automatic.
And the first step, the thing that's disconcerting about that is you're stunned. Bam. Something you didn't think could ever happen, shouldn't have ever happened, did happen. And now you got, and your head is spinning, and your assumptions that you've been operating on, all of a sudden, maybe your key person went wrong, or the fundamentals of the business, or like you said, Goldman Sachs, their analysts, they giving you all the best advice, and then boom, you lose money along with everybody else. But when you're hit by a thing like that and you're stunned, how do you come out of that stunned initial jolt? Because when people are running businesses, they go through these things all the time. There's a good friend of mine, he says, a how-to book. He said, it's really ridiculous to get real detailed on a how-to book about business and life and everything, because it's different every day. And somebody can tell you what they did, it's like in my business, in terms of recruiting, training, developing organizations and things like that. People would have a lot of success, and everybody around the country would want to go into their office and learn their system. And I used to laugh at them and say, his system that he's telling you is first of all, it's what he thinks he's doing and all his people are doing. But most of that stuff, he's taught them, they've heard it, and they're really doing a whole lot of different things. But he's sitting up over here and he thinks they're doing it this way. And so that's one thing. And because people can't even copy. So, you want to copy someone else's. It's really hard to just copy someone else, even a script you read, It's like a song. I have songs that bands cover. It comes out different. They don't sound the same. You can tell. And so people put their personality and energy and everything into it. But when you go out there, and the other thing that happens is people develop. Somebody's really good, having got things working. Well, their system is evolving. And so by the time you go and visit them and copy their system and maybe take a few weeks or months to install it, they've gone on and they're doing something completely different. And so it's good to get some ideas, but you're going to have to be in charge of developing your own life and organizing your own life. Past a certain point, nobody can give you that perfect formula for how to always invest in the stock market. And I know you're an expert on that, but there's so many variables. You're going to have to think for yourself. And I'm sure that that's something you emphasize over and over out there. You can teach fundamentals, you can show strategies and everything, but at some point you've got to get comfortable enough, study enough to where you can pull that trigger and trust your own decisions. And so as you got out there and you went out there in the world, why did you shift to Citigroup?
Well, it's fair to say that by the end of the global financial crisis, I'd seen some of the less pleasant aspects of the culture that I've been involved in, and I was just ready for a change. And Citigroup was offering a move to Singapore. I'd never lived or worked in Asia before, and I just thought, why not? They approached me. They made the offer look pretty attractive, and I thought the opportunity to live and work in Asia for a few years was appealing at the time.
So how has that turned out?
Well, it's turned out really well. I mean, I'm still in Singapore. I'm married to a Singaporean lady, and life's good.
And so what was the culture shock like moving like that?
Yeah, it's tough because you all of the personal capital that you've built goes back to zero. You know, when you've been in an organization for a number of years and you've got a relatively senior role, a visible role, people know who you are, you can get things done just by the amount of personal capital you've built up. And then when you start somewhere new, even though you might be on an equivalent sort of level in terms of, hierarchy, you've got to build your personal capital back from zero. And then that's somewhat humbling because you can't just pick up the phone and get things done. You've got to rebuild your reputation, rebuild relationships, and yeah, it takes time.
Now, when you taking over, are there entrepreneurial aspects to taking a position with an existing big global company? Citigroup was one of the biggest companies in the world around that time. And, I'm sure their operation in Singapore they had teams and people, and they were probably pretty well established. But when you went in, now it's going to be a new deal. And so is that similar to starting a new entrepreneurial operation to kind of pull the team together, get vision?
Nothing like it at all. I mean, the big banks, they talk about, this is your business, you're running your business, and that they use that term a lot, but it's nothing like it. I mean, I thought I knew a thing or two about how to run a business from my experience in the banking sector. But when I started running my own businesses, I realized a completely different ballgame. When you're working within a huge bureaucracy, there is just so much admin and support behind you. And when you haven't got any of that, plus you don't have the brand or the business card, running your own business is a completely different game.
And the unlimited financing and
all of that. Yeah,
all of that. How long were you there before you decided I'm going to get a business of my own? And how did you transition to having your own businesses and being on your own?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess I got to my mid-40s and I call it midlife crisis or whatever you want. But I started asking myself, what am I doing with life? Or what is my marginal contribution to society? And I didn't like the answers I was coming up with, because really all I'd done in my corporate career to that point was help people who were already extremely wealthy stay that way or become even wealthier. And it left me feeling pretty empty. I really didn't I didn't want that to be my mark or my legacy. And so, talking to a few people, I realized that I've built a skill set here, and I could teach this skill set to people who could really benefit from it. People who are still trying to work their way up the first few rungs of the wealth ladder, if you will, rather than working with people who are, to all intents and purposes, have already made it. So it really just became about how do I build something? How do I build a business where I can teach people the essentials of finance and how to make money, how to accelerate your wealth creation, how to create a new income stream, and deliver that, and at the same time let people know that I exist. These are all sort of the initial challenges you're faced with as an online entrepreneur.
So, what were your first steps?
Well, my first steps were, I guess, just distilling what it is people need to know. That there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in finance. Wall Street has concocted its own jargon, its own vernacular, which is often intended to confuse people and give the appearance of information asymmetry. Oh, we know what we're talking about. You don't. You're an outsider because you don't get this.
You need me as an expert. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's finance is often made out to be. I mean, finance can be extremely complex, but it doesn't need to be. And really, my mission was to make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. Taking taking inspiration from Einstein there, and then work on a way to deliver it to people.
And so how did you see that? How did you distill that? And then how did you go forward with building a business with that?
Well, another thing that I realized about myself at this time is that I've always loved teaching. Um, I loved and appreciated working with some wonderful martial arts instructors, and I became a Jeet Kune Do instructor myself. So I'm a certified Jeet Kune Do instructor, and even you know, I realized when I was learning to kite surf a few years ago, look, I'm a terrible kite surfer. I've got no business teaching anyone how to do it. But as I was learning, I was actually thinking to myself, how would I teach someone how to do this? How would I explain what I'm doing to somebody else? And I've always loved this imparting of knowledge. And I think one of the most rewarding things I've found is when you see the light bulb go off in somebody's head, when the penny drops, you see them get it. I just find that incredibly rewarding.
And for
So,
people who don't know, like me, Jeet Kune Do is JeetKunedo, and I assume that's a form of martial arts.
yeah, that's the martial art that Bruce Lee developed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Bruce Lee, he was an amazing martial artist, but he developed his own martial art that he called Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, which is sort of a hybrid of kung fu, fencing, and Western boxing.
And is that something you continue to improve on your entire life, or do you reach a level and that's pretty much it?
You always learn, you always improve, you always change. It's like trading. You never stop learning. You never get stale. Uh, there's always someone or something that can teach you a lesson, and usually the biggest lessons come just when you think you know it all.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.